Imagine this. It is 2 in the morning, and the rest of the world has gone quiet. The city outside your window has finally stopped pretending to be alive, and somewhere in the silence, your mind decides that now, right now, is the perfect time to replay everything. A conversation from 3 days ago, a decision you made 6 months back, a version of yourself you almost became but did not. You lie there in the dark, eyes open, and you are not thinking, not exactly. You are being thought. Something inside you has taken the wheel, and no matter how many times you tell yourself to stop, to sleep, to let it go, the loop keeps running. It is exhausting. And the strange thing is, you already know it is exhausting. You have been here before. You will probably be here again. And yet here you are. There is a particular kind of loneliness that lives inside this moment. Not the loneliness of being without people, but the loneliness of being trapped inside your own head while the world sleeps peacefully around you. You look at the ceiling and wonder why you cannot just turn it off. Why you, specifically, seem to carry this particular weight. Whether something is fundamentally different about the way your mind works, or whether something is fundamentally wrong. That question, more than any other, is what makes 2 in the morning so unbearable. Not the thoughts themselves, the judgment you attach to having them. By the time this video ends, you will understand something about overthinking that most people never get told. Not a productivity tip, not a breathing exercise, something deeper. Something about what the mind is actually doing when it refuses to let you sleep, and why the very thing you have been fighting might be the thing you most need to understand. Psychologists have spent decades trying to define overthinking, and most of the definitions they have landed on are, ironically, a little too simple. The clinical literature talks about rumination, which it describes as repetitive, passive focus on distress and its possible causes and consequences. But that definition, precise as it sounds, misses something essential. It treats overthinking as a malfunction, as noise in the system, as a bug to be fixed. And that framing, however well-intentioned, may be exactly what makes the experience so much worse than it needs to be. Here is what is more accurate. Overthinking is not a malfunction. It is a misfired attempt at safety. The human brain evolved under conditions where uncertainty was not merely uncomfortable, it was lethal. A mind that could not anticipate threats, rehearse scenarios, and run through worst-case possibilities was a mind that got its owner eaten. The very neural architecture that keeps you spiraling at 2 in the morning is the same architecture that kept your ancestors alive long enough to have children. The problem is not that the brain is broken. The problem is that it is running ancient software on a modern operating system. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, that part of the psyche that contains everything we refuse to look at directly. And what is interesting is that the content of most late-night overthinking is not random. It tends to cluster around the same themes, the same unresolved fears, the same unspoken truths. The mind does not replay just anything. It replays what matters. It circles what it has not yet metabolized, which raises a question worth sitting with. What if the thoughts that keep you awake are not attacking you? What if they are trying to tell you something you keep refusing to hear? That reframe is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. But it opens a door that the standard advice, the just stop overthinking advice, never does. Because if your mind is misfiring, you fight it. If your mind is communicating, you listen. And those two postures lead to completely different places. Think about the last time you really could not stop thinking about something. What was it actually about, at its core? Not the surface content, not the specific conversation or specific decision, but beneath that. Was it about control? About being enough? About whether you are seen or loved or on the right path. The mind has a way of disguising its deepest anxieties in the costume of ordinary problems. And at 2 in the morning, with all the distractions stripped away, those costumes start to slip. Here's the first thing you need to understand about why overthinking happens at this specific hour. During the day, the brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive function, planning, and rational thought, is kept busy by external demands. Meetings, deadlines, conversations, the 100 small decisions that structure a waking life. This busyness is not neutral. It functions as a kind of cognitive armor, a way of keeping the deeper, more anxious layers of processing at bay. But at night, when the external inputs stop, the armor comes off. What you are left with is not a quieter mind. You are left with a mind that is finally unobstructed, and everything it has been holding back during the day comes flooding in. This is why the research on nocturnal rumination consistently shows that it is not simply an intensified version of daytime worry. It has a different quality. It is more emotional, more self-referential, more tied to identity and meaning. In the day, you worry about what will happen. At 2 in the morning, you worry about who you are. That is not a small distinction. And then there is the role of the default mode network, a set of brain regions that activates when you are not focused on the external world. The default mode network is responsible for self-referential thought, for imagining the future, for reconstructing the past. It is, in a very literal neurological sense, the machine that makes you you, and it never fully shuts off. When you are lying in the dark with nothing to do, the default mode network runs at full power. It starts connecting things, memories and fears and hopes and regrets. It looks for patterns. It tries to make sense of your life as a story. And sometimes, the story it tells you at 2 in the morning is the most honest story you have heard all day. Here is the second insight, and this one tends to land harder. People who overthink chronically are not, in most cases, people with overactive imaginations. They are people with unresolved emotional debt. Something in the past, a wound, a rejection, an identity threat, a loss, was never fully processed. Not because they were weak or avoidant, but because the circumstances of their lives never gave them a safe enough container to feel it all the way through. And so the mind keeps returning to it, not to torture them, to finish the job. The repetition is not pointless. It is the mind's attempt to complete something incomplete. The psychologist Peter Levine, writing about trauma and the nervous system, observed that unprocessed experiences do not disappear. They cycle. They wait. They come back in different forms until the body and mind have finally done what they needed to do with them. At 2 in the morning, when the distractions are gone and the armor is down, that cycling becomes audible. You hear it, and because it is uncomfortable, you call it a problem. But what if it is actually a process? What if your mind at 2 in the morning is not broken? What if it is working? What if the thing you have been trying to silence is the thing that most deserves to be heard? What if the exhaustion you feel is not from thinking too much, but from spending so much energy trying not to think? What if the loop does not stop because you have never actually let it finish? Those 4 questions are not rhetorical in the usual sense. They are diagnostic. Because how you answer them, not out loud, but in the way your chest tightens or releases as you hear them, tells you something about where you actually are with this. Here is the third insight, and it requires honesty to hold. Many chronic overthinkers have developed a secondary relationship with their overthinking. They think about thinking. They worry about worrying. They lie awake, not just experiencing the original thoughts, but experiencing anxiety about the fact that they are having those thoughts again. This meta layer of suffering is often more damaging than the original loop, because now the mind is not just processing something difficult, it is judging itself for processing it. And that judgment creates a kind of internal civil war that can last for years. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in the 17th century that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. What he probably did not anticipate was the specific modern version of this, which is not that people cannot sit still, but that when they finally do, they turn on themselves. The room is quiet, the body is still, and the mind goes to war. Now, after all of that, what do you actually do? The first shift is the hardest, and it does not look like anything from the outside. It is simply this: stop treating your thoughts as enemies to be defeated, and start treating them as information to be decoded. This sounds passive. It is not. It requires more presence and more courage than trying to suppress a thought, because suppression is a way of not having to feel what the thought is pointing to. Decoding requires you to feel it. When a thought keeps returning, instead of asking, "How do I stop this?" ask, "What is this thought actually trying to protect me from?" That question changes everything. Not because it always produces a clean answer, but because it repositions you from victim to investigator. You are no longer being haunted. You are doing detective work. Think of it the way a good therapist thinks about a client's recurring dream. The dream keeps coming back, not because the brain is malfunctioning, but because there is something in it the psyche has not yet been able to fully look at. The therapist does not help the client stop having the dream. The therapist helps them understand what the dream is made of. And usually, once the understanding arrives, the dream begins to lose its grip on its own. Your late-night loops work the same way. The second shift is about timing, and it is more practical than it sounds. Research consistently shows that actively engaging with anxious thoughts in the hour before bed significantly increases their intensity and duration. This is not because the thoughts are stronger at night. It is because the mind is more receptive to them, more permeable, less defended. Which means the practice is not to fight the thoughts when they arrive at 2 in the morning, but to create structured time earlier in the day to engage with them intentionally. Some psychologists call this a worry period, 15 to 20 minutes in the afternoon, no more, where you sit with what is unresolved and actually think it through. Not to solve it, just to acknowledge it, to let the mind complete a small portion of the cycle while you are resourced enough to hold it. Over time, the mind learns that there is a designated space for this, and it becomes less compelled to commandeer your sleep to get the job done. If you are finding that this is resonating, if you have recognized yourself in any corner of this video, consider leaving a thought in the comments. Not because it will fix anything, but because there is something genuinely useful about making the private visible. And if you want more of this kind of exploration, subscribing means the next time we go somewhere difficult together, you will already be there. The third shift is about the relationship between certainty and rest. One of the most consistent findings in the psychology of rumination is that overthinkers are disproportionately high in a trait called intolerance of uncertainty. The mind that keeps running at 2 in the morning is in most cases a mind that cannot bear not knowing how it will turn out, not knowing whether the decision was right, not knowing whether it is enough. And so it keeps calculating, keeps rehearsing, keeps trying to arrive at a certainty that, by the nature of reality, is simply not available. The loop does not end, because the loop cannot produce what it is looking for. The practice here is not to become comfortable with uncertainty. That framing sets too high a bar. The practice is smaller. It is to notice, in the middle of the loop, that you are not actually solving anything. You are searching for a feeling of resolution that thinking alone cannot give you. Like trying to quench thirst by describing water. The mind can conceptualize rest. It cannot manufacture it. And recognizing this, really recognizing it, is sometimes enough to interrupt the cycle, not end it. interrupt it. And sometimes interruption is all you need for the body to finally do what the mind has been preventing it from doing, which is simply to let go. The fourth shift is about identity, and it might be the most important one. Many people who struggle with overthinking have, over time, unconsciously absorbed it as part of who they are. The overthinker, the one who cannot switch off, the person who cares too much, feels too much, thinks too much, and identity is remarkably persistent. The mind will generate experiences consistent with its self-concept, not because it is malicious, but because coherence feels safer than uncertainty. If you believe you are someone who cannot sleep because your mind never stops, your mind will keep proving that belief correct, not as punishment, as confirmation. The shift here is not to replace one identity with another, not to decide you are now a calm, grounded person who sleeps easily. The shift is to loosen the grip of the label altogether, to hold the experience of overthinking without the conclusion that this is what you are. You are not an overthinker. You are a person who sometimes thinks a great deal, especially about things that matter to you. That is a different thing, and it leaves space for the experience to change. Here is the paradox that this entire video has been building toward, the one that tends to land quietly but stay for a long time. The people who are most tormented by overthinking at 2 in the morning are, in the vast majority of cases, also the people whose depth of thought is one of their greatest strengths. The sensitivity that keeps you awake is the same sensitivity that makes you perceptive, that makes you careful, that makes you the kind of person other people come to when they need someone who actually understands. The architecture of your suffering and the architecture of your gifts are not separate structures. They are the same structure, experienced from different angles, which means the goal was never to eliminate the depth. The goal was to learn how to carry it without being crushed by it, to let the mind do its work without mistaking the process for a catastrophe, to stop spending the hours between midnight and dawn fighting yourself, and to start very slowly, learning to be curious about what you find there instead. At 2 in the morning, when the ceiling is the whole world and the thoughts will not stop, you do not need to fix anything. You need to understand something. And understanding, when it finally arrives, is quieter than you expected. It does not announce itself. It just makes the room a little easier to breathe in.